Hey, everybody, welcome back to another show. We are here with the Mystery at Blind Frog Ranch Season 2 recap brought to you by Blind Frog Ranch Outpost. I'm here with our buddies, Mr. James Keenan, who you all know from last week's show. And of course, he's a well-published author, wealth of information. If you have not followed this gentleman, you need to follow him. How are you doing, James?
Doing well, David. How are you?
I'm doing great. And of course, Carl the Crusher is back with us, right? We missed you last week. You were doing a move, but Carl, you're back. You're with us, and we've got an awesome show. Guys, follow this gentleman. Carl the Crusher has awesome stuff to watch always online. Carl, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be finally moved into my house. Just got my office finally set up yesterday, so we'll see how it all goes. I'm excited.
Nice. Yeah. The move now. You're still up in the Utah area, correct?
Yeah, I'm right on the Utah-Arizona border, halfway between Area 51 and the Grand Canyon. So whichever way I go, there's full of mysteries. Right to the north of me is the south end of Zion's National Park. Massive 1,000-foot sandstone cliff walls and canyons. There's petroglyphs and mysteries all over the place here. I'm getting ready to go.
Oh, you're in heaven.
So I'm in heaven right now. Yeah.
That's awesome. James, I'm guessing you and Carl are going to connect up and go do some of that stuff together when you can.
Yeah, we've been talking about it for a while now. Absolutely.
Nice. Hey, before we get started, we've got a phenomenal show for you guys today. Obviously, everybody was really upset that there was no Mystery at Blind Frog Ranch show last night. They took a week off from the broadcasting. We have no control of that, guys. That's a part of the show schedule. That's television. But what we didn't want to skip a week here. We wanted to go ahead and bring you guys some more information. We're kind of mid-season right now. Lots of exciting stuff has happened on the show, but we've also got some really great information from the whole area, from the Uintah Basin. And that's what we're focusing on today with some of our guests. Before we get to our guests, I want to show you guys, as always, Blind Frog Ranch Outpost up in Vernal, Utah, blindfrogranchoutpost.com. We've got some amazing things. We do a special for you guys every week. And this week, we are now looking at the mugs. So check out those mugs. We've got them both with the Blind Frog Ranch logo with the frog on it and the iconic tree with the BFR on there. So if you go there, 15% off this week only. Use the coupon code BFR mug on checkout. You'll get your 15% off. And you guys can jump right into some cool gear on that. Now, if you're not already following us, guys, you gotta plug in. Go check us out on Instagram. We've got a link right down here in the bottom corner. We've got things going on and VIP specials always going on Facebook. If you're watching us on Facebook, that's great. But please bring your friends. Get this word out. We got some great information going on here, guys. And then, of course, make it on over to Blind Frog Ranch Outpost. You can book your tours there. You can buy your cool gear there. You can actually check out some behind-the-scenes type of videos that we've shot with both Dwayne and Chad that are there at all times. We feature a different one all the time. So some fun stuff, guys. All right. James, Carl, how exciting is it this week that we've got some people from the area to talk about personal experience? Good stuff, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's start. Let's get one person that we all know very well, dear to Blind Frog Ranch and Skinwalker Ranch. I'm going to bring on here Michele Miners. Michele, let me real quick before I say hello to you, tell everybody this woman is a wealth of information on all things Uintah Basin. And today she's going to bring some expert opinions and views about the Native American involvement with everything that's going on up there. Michele Miners, how are you doing today?
Good morning, David.
So you've been in the area for quite some time, haven't you, Michele?
About 6.5 years.
Nice. And of course, we're going to get into all kinds of things and tap into your knowledge. Thank you so much for being here. But I got to welcome a couple more people here real quick. So I'm going to bring on a gentleman that was with us this last year. Mr. Stinger. Stinger was involved with Blind Frog Ranch Outpost in doing some tours for us this last year, and he's a security expert of more than 5 years doing high-end security. We welcome you to the show, Stinger. Say hello. How you doing?
Hi, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. We're going to get into some fun stuff with Stinger here in just a few minutes. And we've got one more gentleman who's new to us, but an awesome gentleman who just happens to own some land up there right by by the Blind Frog Ranch and by Skinwalker just below them. We're going to talk to and welcome Aaron. Aaron, how are you doing today, my friend?
Good. How are you?
Doing great. All right, guys. I don't want to take too much time on myself. I know you guys aren't here to talk to me. You guys are here to listen to what we have from our experts. So I'm going to jump right in because we got a lot of stuff to talk about. This up to this point in the season, lots of exciting stuff going on in the basin. Lots of questions that revolve around, what not just what's going on Blind Frog Ranch, but what's going on in that area, and how is it affected by things like, what do the Native Americans think of this? What do they think of how this works? So we're going to start off with Michele. Michele, I want to ask a couple of quick questions. Can you tell us a little bit of how you work and represent the First Nation project?
Well, it's interesting. I want to clarify today in our Native American terms, First Nation refers to the Pacific Northwest Canadian Indians. And we are considered here down in this area of the United States as the Western Native American tribes. So there's a clarification. What I do with the First Nation, though, I have partners that we do development of entrepreneurial projects in agricultural and intelligence systems, working with their lands and resources. And that's what I do with my partnership. I have a couple of former tribal chairmen on our partnership. We are also have Western tribal partners here in Montana, the Crow Nation. It's an exciting time to see the combination of these tribes coming together and utilizing their skill sets to do entrepreneurial projects that are protecting the lands of the Native Americans.
Well, and that's actually one of the hot topics right now, right? Is, protecting the lands. What are the actual cultural thoughts behind, the Native American perspective, right? It's easy to trample, a culture's beliefs when you just don't know about them, right? And that's what I think a lot of people fear is happening in that area. Can you tell us a bit about your heritage and how you were taught to respect that culture?
Yeah, I'm of 3 tribes. Interestingly enough, I've had the opportunity to be up here and assist and observe the Ute tribe. My native tribes are Pawnee, Chippewa, and Navajo. And, due to the past of being Navajo, we hear about the lore. I don't want to get into this too much of the Skinwalker, that it was our nation that cursed the Utes with this mythological curse. And I just want to clarify some things. It was a small group of evil medicine men back in the 1860s that put this curse because of what was going on at the time of where the United States government was with the military. And interestingly enough, the tribes were hunting each other down by using scouts. And so the Navajos and the Utes had some turmoil there. And so the legend says that we cursed the Utes. And today, I have to say, that no longer exists. In some traditional circles, it's taught, but in essence, the Skinwalker, as I was told by a medicine man in my tribe with the Navajos, that it was a form of time travel. They used to occupy people's bodies, animals particularly, as a means of time travel.
Interesting.
how that lore came about. Yes. Yes.
That's that's very, very interesting. Now I know James and Carl, you've studied quite a bit of this too. Have you heard of the same things?
Yeah, not only just the curses of the late 1800s, but it seems like strange phenomenon go back with the indigenous people and the native tribes in the area, maybe even thousands of years that have inhabited it, and that's evident in the petroglyphs and pictographs all over the region, and the different settlements and the myths and folklores of those tribes. It's very fascinating when you start to weave the larger tapestry together to paint a picture. You realize that the strange phenomenon has existed throughout the region and expansive throughout that whole area, and maybe even part of a bigger global phenomenon that we're yet to understand. But the rabbit hole goes really deep when you start to dig into it and explore it, and it's very, very fascinating and interesting stuff.
Wow. James?
Yeah, and Michele and I have known each other now for a couple of years, and I think we've talked about it at the UFO MegaCon a couple of years back, that the Navajo practiced Adishgash, and the Yinald Lushi are the skinwalkers. And I apologize if I offend anybody for saying that from the Navajo Nation. I'm just kind of explaining what their names and the black magic arts are with Adishgash. But Michelle's right in regards to, depending on, and it's interesting, depending on the Hogan where they live, depending on what direction it faced, went into this possibility of time travel. You could always tell who the skinwalkers were or where they were practicing, because their entrance was facing incorrectly. And Michele, I believe, am I correct? It was west, meaning that it was the dark arts magic, or is it the opposite way?
No, the east brought in the sun, brought in the good spirit.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. And the west is the Adishgash. And so that's where everything took place with the Navajo.
Interesting. So there's some true validity to the folklore of, respecting the land and the potential of, curses and things of that nature. We get a lot of questions, guys, online about stuff like this, and in relation to what Dwayne is doing on Blind Frog Ranch. So I'm going to direct back to Michele. You have a relationship with Dwayne, and you know that, many people may see, just because you see clips of him saying, I just want the gold, right? And he's a very driven man. So he does just want to, complete his mission. But at the same time, I want you to speak to this, so it's not just coming from me. What is the respect level there when it comes to the land and giving back and all that? Can you elaborate?
Sure. The Native Americans have always respected Mother Earth, is what we call it, in all nations, not just particular nations. Everybody refers to Mother Earth and Creative Father. And so, in essence, we respect the land because it is the life that we love, all life forms of that kingdom, of that realm. And so the Native Americans never killed anything, just they used everything, what they killed. They never hunted for sport. It was always used for the purpose of use.
And even when you're taking something from the land, right? What's the procedure there? I've heard Dwayne talk about this. It's really interesting.
Well, we refer it to our brother. We talk to the animals, the plants, for providing their medicine, or there is what we got to thank you for the health of their meat. We ask them for a blessing. And for being able to be there for our use. And then in return, we usually, depending on the tribe and their traditions, we always give tobacco or some form of offering.
Right. Well, and I have to bring this up. So on our tour on Blind Frog Ranch, we actually go and we sift through some sand. There's an area that's just rich with these trading beads that are like tracked back to, you know, some say as late as the 1600s. I mean, it's crazy. And we're always sure to give something back to the land when we take a few of those beads. And that's a normal practice. As a Native American woman, does that sound, you know, appropriate? Is that something that you believe is the way that we should handle things?
Well, I think when you not knowing all the traditions of the area or the beliefs of the people who live, you know, near the reservation there, particularly every tribe has their own customs and beliefs and traditions, and we call it medicine.
Yeah.
And what's been really interesting talking to individuals who are practicing certain medicine have said, no, leave those bees there because they have a lore about the little people. We could go into a lot of things about that.
Right.
And so they believe that's always been there. It was for the purpose of the little people. But, you know, not knowing that, you can leave an offering for another thing. You know, if you want to take the bees, which I know individuals have on the ranch, and I wasn't knowledgeable about that. But having talked to some of these medicine practitioners, excuse me, these people who understand the medicine, they leave things alone. They think it belongs to the land.
Sure. And we're very careful about that as well. For instance, we don't, there's lots of really amazing things out there, rocks and of course the water and the dirt and the sand. And we don't mess with anything like that because there has to be a healthy respect level. And actually that came from, at least with my first interaction with the ranch, came from Dwayne. Dwayne said, no, we have to respect the land. We have to respect Native Americans. We have to respect all of the tradition that comes with this land. So thank you for that clarification, Michele. It's really interesting to see how all of this comes into play. And somebody new to this is a great point to bring Stinger in. So Stinger, I'm going to talk to you for a second. You know, you got brought in last minute as extra help. We were kind of overwhelmed with the amount of people that wanted to take tours last year. And you came in and helped us doing some tours out on the ranch. Having been out there, I mean, what do you think of the land? It's pretty amazing, right?
It's awesome. Not only is it beautiful, but it's pretty rugged. I mean, you've got various types of terrain just on the ranch itself. It varies from flat to rocky and steep slopes and cliffs. And it's amazing. But yeah, it's, as you said, it's very rugged. It can be a little bit much for some people if they're not prepared for it.
Well, and I have to clarify for everybody watching. I very much understand where you're coming from on that, because, ladies and gentlemen, he had to drive one of the tour vans, which is a 4x van, up through that, and there's some pretty rugged area there, isn't it?
Yeah, there were some times where I was kind of concerned myself whether that we were on a pretty good little tilt there at some points trying to go up that side of that hill. It was some people were a little disturbed by it.
Sure. But we've been doing this a while. It's a really great, guys. If you haven't done this, you got to check it out. The tours are amazing. But I want to tap into Stinger. I want to tap into a little bit of your other background. So you've been doing high-end security for many years as well, and then you're involved with the ranch and all of that. So I want to know, from a security standpoint, since you're bringing up this rough terrain, what kind of scenario is it there? I mean, it's not an easy thing, right?
You know, they've talked on the show in the past about some of the challenges they have on the ranch, and I've observed the same things. You've got various types of terrain, which makes it very hard to keep an eye on the whole ranch at once. So you're going to have major blind spots, and with such a large area to try to cover, keeping an area like that secure is going to be a huge challenge.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. So you're an Army veteran as well, right?
Yes, sir.
And the high-end security for about 5 years. With that perspective, I mean, do you think that it's even possible to secure this land? Well, I mean, unless you're talking giant fences around the edge, which you can't do because part of it ties into BLM. There's some difficulties there, right?
You can put up a soft perimeter around that location with the use of technology, which I'm pretty sure they've taken steps. But there's various types of technology that we can identify interlopers.
Okay. So that's one of the things to be concerned out there. But let's talk now. We started with a little bit of Michele has some great insight as to some of what the background is, especially concerning Native Americans with there. But there's been some really interesting and strange things happen on the ranch. Stinger, I want to hear, have you experienced anything strange while you've been out there?
A couple of different instances. We had one of the people on the tour end up taking something from the ranch that they shouldn't have taken and didn't leave an offering behind, and they started having some not necessarily real bad negative things happen, but enough to make them decide that they had done something wrong. We replaced those items back on the ranch. We also, in driving the van up there, we get close to the energy zone and that thing would just overheat. And it was uncanny. Every time we got close to the energy zone, the van would overheat. And
that's an actual thing, guys. I was there. It's crazy. The van worked perfect every time we were driving anywhere except that one space. And the van, we had the van checked out by 3 different mechanics. There were no issues with the van. I mean, it's a fairly new van. It's beautiful. There's like no issues normally. And then just in that one space on the property, it would overheat, gurgle like crazy, and act like it wasn't going to run. And then you get out of there, and it's just fine, right? So real quick, because I want to cover several topics, and then I just want to talk a little bit, guys. With this unusual happening that you were experiencing, Stinger, on the land, you also got to work with Dwayne and Chad. How were they with you with all of this? Because it can get overwhelming and crazy. What were they like?
Those guys are great. I mean, just all around great people. Never had anything negative to say to me or about anything that I had done, or not that I was trying to do anything negative, but we had a really good time. They were really personable. I love being out there with those guys. It was complete joy. I look forward to every time I go out there to.
Well, and part of it we've heard from everybody here that's been there is just the beauty of the land. It's truly beautiful, right? Are you excited about this coming year?
I am so excited. So excited. We had so much fun last year. I believe Carl the Crusher was on my tour, which we had a lot of fun with those guys. And I'm looking forward to the next year and having a lot more stuff to talk about and informing people about the ranch and showing them around and just having a good time. That's what I'm all about.
Yeah. I agree. It's a phenomenal thing, guys. If you haven't been out there, go to blindfrogranchoutpost.com, use that QR code if you can, and pre-register your ticket for this coming year, because we're going to start showing dates that are available here soon. We're waiting for the weather to clear up for us a little bit. All right. With that, guys, this is this part's going to get a little bit fun, and then we're going to go back to everybody. There's a lot to touch on here today. Aaron, my understanding is that you have some property up there. Can you give us a little bit of backstory as to how you acquired the land that you have up there in Vernal?
Yeah, sure. So about a year and a half ago, actually about a year ago, my wife received a notice that she was in some will. And remarkably, at the same time we received this FedEx notice from FedEx, her mother, who lives up in Canada, called her on the phone and said, "You should be receiving some paperwork, some legal documents." I mean, it was kind of crazy, the timing. So anyway, we read it, and it said that she was inheriting some property over in Vernal, or over by Vernal. And still, we weren't sure what to believe. And it was from her great-grandfather, who, once again, my wife didn't really know her great-grandfather. She was very young when he was alive.
Okay.
And so she doesn't recall many memories with him. But anyway, she was in this will. And so we drove out to Mighton, I believe it's called, right? I always pronounce that wrong. Anyway, we go out there and they had the proceedings, and there were 5 people in the will. 4 of the 5 daughters were named, and then there was my wife, a great granddaughter, which I still don't quite understand what happened there, but it happened. And so we went out on this property, and it's massive. It's like 160 plus acres, and it's beautiful, beautiful. If you've ever been out to, Utah, well, you all have, obviously,
Right.
but it's just absolutely breathtaking. It's wonderful. Red Rock, Red Bluffs. We have the Green River down there, 9 Mile Creek. It looks like, parts of it looks like the Grand Canyon, a mini Grand Canyon.
Right. It's absolutely beautiful. But I'd have to ask you this. Were you aware of Skinwalker Ranch and Blind Frog Ranch, and did that concern you at all, or were you excited about it, or what were your feelings towards knowing that you just got land up in that area?
It's funny you ask that, because my initial thought when I Googled where the property was, oh my gosh, this is right by Skinwalker Ranch and Blind Frog. I really did.
Right.
And if you look on a Google map, it's pretty much just directly south of both those ranches. And
well, and actually, you were kind enough to share some photos with us. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up some of those photos, and let's take a look here. So this sand wash sign here, tell us about that.
So sand wash is basically the area where our property is located. There's actually an airstrip that I'll go into that in just a minute. But also sand wash launching dock is where they launch for the Green River rafting trips and things like that.
Okay.
And so there you go. If you have that right there on the top, in the first knuckle there, if you were able to zoom in a little bit, that's where the launching dock is. And our property is right there. Our property goes from the river, from the launching dock, all the way across west, or to your left, across that airstrip that you can see right down there in the middle, and goes all the way over to the 9 Mile Creek, which is on the furthest left, and then it goes all the way south down to the Green River, then back up to the upper right-hand corner of the Green River as well.
So I got to interrupt you here for a second, because I'm hearing something I need to know about. What are you talking about, airstrip?
That was the first thing that I said too.
You have an airstrip on your property.
We do. It was shocking to me. We were driving to our property, and a family member told me, said, "Oh, by the way, we're going to see the airstrip." And I'm like, "Airstrip? What are you talking about?" And so he goes, "Yeah, there was an old airstrip here. Yeah, this is the best picture that I had. If you're able to zoom in, there's a little air sock out there you can see. But yeah, it's a dirt runway, and it's on top of a bluff. And basically, right now, people use it, or the BLM uses it to check on the lands and stuff. Also, for that sand wash launching, they use it to fly people in now to be close to be able to go on the river rafting trips. So small aircrafts use it quite often now. But what I was told about it from a couple different people, and I've got different stories, and this is what confuses me, is that, one, I was told that the government was using this quite frequently back in the 40s, 50s, in that era. And then I've also been told that this was just a BLM used runway for, the last 20 years, which I don't seem to believe.
Okay, so you find out you've got property. You find out that property is close to Skinwalker and Blind Frog, and it's up there in this area that you know very little about, right?
Yes.
And then you find out that you have a runway on there that was possibly government.
Yes.
James, do you think that had to do with that NASA stuff we found before?
Um, I'm not sure. I don't know about that far south. In regards to them flying in, none of the documentation had anything about airstrips being used by NASA or by the U.S. Geological Survey teams. So I'm not sure.
Interesting. Michele, how would you react to this? What would you do if you found that strip?
If I would find the strip, I would kind of go back and do a forensics on the establishment of when the easement was constructed. I would actually go and do some research on why the particulars of why they even put it there.
Yeah, Aaron, I have a question for you now. Do you or your family you inherited this from family? Do any of you guys fly?
No. And no one that in our family that I'm aware of flies.
Okay, so it was obviously used by government and or who knows what, right? Like you said, BLM has control of half of the strip, right? The other half is your property.
Half of it's BLM owned, and then half of it's on our property or private property.
Okay, and for those of you watching, if you're not familiar, the acronym BLM is Bureau of Land Management. That's the Utah land management. It's part of government, right? Carl, have you heard of any strips up there? You've done a lot of research.
There's strange markings like air travel markings and arrows in the ground that you come across. Like when you get out hiking into these remote locations and up on top of mesas, sometimes there's even like directional pointers that they used to use back in the early days of flight and things. And when you Google search around and look overhead, especially like around Area 51 over in Nevada, there's next to the newer runways and airstrips, if you look close, there's a lot of what look like really, really old dirt runways and airstrips around in the desert that don't seem to make any sense, or they're not even near any kind of actual establishment. And it really makes you wonder what was going on. It reminds you of the Nazca lines or something strange if you really want to get weird with it. But it makes you wonder how far back it goes. And maybe even Michele might know a little bit more about that, like why there would be runway strips or airstrips, or if it has anything to do with looking to the sky or astronomy. I don't know. It's hard to tell how far back this goes because you have layers and layers of culture that come into these areas. It's like everywhere you find these interesting locations like Blind Frog Ranch and Skinwalker and around, you have these forts built like Fort Duchesne, and there's Fort Pierce near where I live, and a lot of different fortresses get put up where they stationed troops, and a lot of those guys were involved in weird esoteric stuff too. A lot of them were Masons, and you find those carvings around, and so there's layers and layers of strangeness revolved around it. So I wouldn't be surprised if the airstrip wasn't part of NASA experiments or research or who knows what. When you dig into it, it could be really interesting.
Very, very interesting. Aaron, your mind must have just been like blown trying to figure out what's going on with this land you just inherited.
It was absolutely crazy. It was mind blowing because for when I'm walking this property, first trying to process all this, like this is absolutely breathtaking property. I mean, you walk out there and it's just absolutely beautiful. And
yeah, it really is. I mean, these pictures are gorgeous. In fact, we had somebody post here a second ago. I'm going to go ahead and show this real quick. A mountain looks like an Indian laying on his back, the sleeping Ute mountain near.
Wow.
Right?
True.
Kind of cool. And then this pic here is just absolutely breathtaking.
Right?
Yes.
So share with me. So it's inherited from family.
Yes.
You found out there's an airstrip. Do you have any stories passed down about any anomalies, any weird things, anything that's out of the ordinary?
There are some family members that I spoke to the last trip that when we went out to see the property the first time. And just, strange things happening out there, people seeing unidentified flying objects in the sky, things like that. But, you hear that everywhere. and for the most part in Utah, it seems like, because there's a lot of weird stuff happening out here. And I didn't put really 2 cents into it. But then I should share a story if that's okay.
I'm hearing a but then. You must have a personal experience. Yes, please.
So I do. And every time that I tell this story, even though it's been 7-8 months ago, I still don't believe it myself, even though I witnessed it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
It's crazy to me. So we're driving back from actually being out on the property with all the other family. We were out there the whole day. And once again, this property, to access our property or where that airstrip is, it's about it's about an hour and a half drive from any main road up north, or about an hour and 20-minute drive to a main road down south. So either way, you got a long drive on a dirt road. It takes a while. Okay. And so it's getting dusk. My boy had to stop. He had to use the restroom. So I got out and I was just admiring the sky. It was, just a beautiful red, orange. The red rock was still beautiful. Everything just looked wonderful. And over one of the mesas, on top of the mesas, I could see 2 headlights, it seemed like, coming towards us. And I was just looking at it going, whoa, I hope those guys realize that's a mesa, because when you're out there, if you're on a mesa, you don't know if that thing drops off 300 feet right in front of you. I mean, it looks flat forever, And so my son comes around and goes, oh, Dad, there's some people out there. And I'm like, yeah, God, I'm hoping they're not going to drive off that top. And they stop, and we're looking at them, and the headlights, they separate like this. And I'm like, what are they doing? And then they shot up in the sky into a point in the sky and disappeared. And that was my reaction.
And you've never experienced anything like this before?
No, never.
Middle of nowhere, on a dirt road, you think it's another car coming at you, and then it splits and goes straight up.
Well, I thought it was 2 motorcycles. I thought it was 2 guys on dirt bikes up on the mesa, and then that went sideways. Both lights went sideways, then shot up diagonally into the same point in the sky.
Wow. Yeah. and I'm gonna let James or Carl or Michele pipe in on this, because I know you've heard many, many more of these kinds of stories in this area. Is this uncommon to hear something like this?
This is something that's been studied even by Project Blue Book, even throughout Arizona and up through Utah and areas. Part of it ties into the research that J. Allen Hynek was doing over in Norway with the Hestel. I always say this wrong. The Hestelund lights or whatever. And it's interesting because, like in the last episode on Blind Frog Ranch, they found all of the gallium deposits, which is one of the main components that we use today for converting electricity into illumination and into light. It's used in calculators to light the back screen, and gallium is one of the fastest ways of converting electricity into illuminated light on electronics and for circuit boards and things. And so it makes you wonder why this stuff is in the ground and in the geology, if that has something to do with it, or if it's also has to do with what Michele is talking about, this phenomenon of tapping into the energy of the earth and into Mother Nature with these native rituals and cultures, and involving time travel or connection with other dimensions, and how that could all interplay with these hot spots in the geology up around that region.
Okay. Carl, thank you for that. Unfortunately, you weren't with us last week. We did a long talk about the gallium. That's a great tie-in to the potential of this. Last week, James and Chris Bartel spoke quite a bit about some potentials of the gallium and the physics, right? The potential physics involved with the use of gallium. And now you're talking about, how it can work with the light. So the geology is now kind of almost meeting up with the folklore and all of this, because we know that there's energies, we know there's magnetics, we know there's all these things in the land. Michele, a question to you on the Native American perspective on this. their respect for the land, I believe, and you correct me if I'm wrong, goes deeper than just, oh, it's beautiful land. I think they have a little bit of an understanding that there's powers and call it magnetics, call it, chemistry, call it physics, call it whatever you want. There's powers involved, right?
Yeah, here's an interesting thing to Aaron's story. There is a personal story my mother tells when she was a girl and saw the same phenomena occur when her and her grandmother lived in a hogan, and the road went down into the valley, and it was coming down. They thought it was a car. They thought it was one of their uncles. And as the lights approached, they went their different directions. And the Navajos believe that we call in the ancestors, and we call them orbs today.
Wow.
And the lights are actually called in by the medicine man on the Navajo reservation to come and visit because of the ancestral connection. So whether it's mystical, today science is catching up with electromagnetic fields that occur on ley lines today on our Earth. Currently, we're studying that with, as you know, you had Dr. Segala. I am working with him on a project right now, and I won't address it all the way, but he is studying the electromagnetic fields that occur in nature, and
Right.
sometimes nature doesn't always cooperate.
And Michele, we've had Dr. Segal, as you know, on with us before, and I actually wouldn't mind you elaborating a little bit on his MUPUS program. That's, to my understanding, and you can tell me a little bit more, that sensor measures all sorts of things, and he's trying to put a science explanation to some of these interesting and unexplained happenings. What kind of things does that sensor do?
Well, it's an unidentified phenomena tracking portal. And what we do is we're tracking the energies in nature, how it affects the human body in a negative and a positive way. And we're trying to track, why one thing we're finding is Native Americans have a sensitivity level that's higher than most. Mm-hmm. And it seems that this phenomena happens to tap more into their DNA side of things. So that's what we're trying to explore, and why some people are affected positively, why some people are affected negatively, and we don't.
And I think it's no coincidence as well when you look at these ancient sites where they dwelt and built, like at Chaco Canyon, where the Pueblo built, and even the pyramids in Egypt and down in Teotihuacan, all these major sites, when you look at them from overhead, they are constructed and connected to the other settlements around almost with like a strange laser precision, almost like they were tapping into these energy lines and designing their structures not just for habitation, but to harness this power of the earth or this electromagnetic field. And it makes you wonder if it's how they were communicating over vast distances, if it like enhanced their spiritual communication, what we would call like telepathy or remote viewing, things like that. They could have been doing ceremonies and rituals in these sacred spots and staying in touch with everyone in the tribe, and even at a global level that we don't understand today, that's been lost to us.
Which leads to a question that I wanted to throw at Michele here. There's been a lot of questions online as well about potential portals. Do you think that in the Uintah Basin that there's some sorts of portals that may be interdimensional, on these lands?
Well, it's really interesting that you would talk to that. I spent some time with Junior Hicks. And Junior Hicks, there are some personal witness stories that he had, and his wife had a very interesting experience for 4 hours of a portal opening up to her, and she just stood there and watched it for 4 hours.
Amazing. Aaron, have you experienced anything like that on your property?
No, not yet.
No, the lights were enough for you?
The lights were enough. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Well, I do have to ask you a question.
Oh, wow.
Go say again.
So I got cold chills when Michele was talking about that.
Well, I want to ask you in relation to what Michele was saying, your heritage. Do you mind telling us? Do you have any Native American in your ancestral background?
In mine?
Yes.
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Well, maybe in my father's side, there might be 3 or 4 generations back. Actually, I might recall.
I'm only curious because you mentioned that this land goes back like 4 generations in your family, right?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
it's in my wife's family. My wife's
In
family.
your wife's family. Got it.
Yes.
Got it. James, do you have thoughts on the whole thought of these lights and/or portals, and just, I mean, come on, there's so much going on in this land.
Yeah, well, I mean, a big part of my study is on the geomagnetic portals that are taking effect on the Uintah Basin and up in the Uintah Mountains. And work a lot with several individuals in the area. And it's really interesting that when you have these lower microtesla reading in the magnetic field for each location, that's showing that there's probably some type of cavity or emptiness underground. And we're finding that there's this transient change between a really low reading and then suddenly this huge jump, which makes you wonder, if you have this empty space below, what's filling it all of a sudden to alter that magnetic field? And if you look at places like the Triangle on Skinwalker Ranch, they've actually captured what appears to be a portal opening above it and some type of, unidentified aerial phenomena then hanging out right next to it and then just suddenly disappearing. But what's interesting too, and I think Michele and Carl talked about this slightly, when you're talking about the petroglyphs and the pictographs of the Native Americans, a lot of those people that are in the know into the old ways understand that some of these symmetrical type petroglyphs and pictographs supposedly are a download. And if you touch them in a certain way or direction and follow a path with them, a download of information. And if that's occurring from a scientific standpoint, is that some type of RF, EF, or EMF that's involved with an object built into the magnetite or whatever type of rock it's on? Or is it something below ground? Or is it something, coming from elsewhere and being directed, some type of energy direction pathway? And when you're talking about the basin, you're talking about this weird, strange phenomenon, an individual phenomenon occurring. And it seems to always start from up north and lead downward if you really follow the path. So maybe it's originating and it's hitting certain locations that it was meant to bounce back off of or purposely come into contact with and then pass on something. And we just don't yet know what that is.
And James, I've recently filmed a video where I went to a really historical petroglyph site called the Little Black Rock Mountain, which was like a youth initiation area where they would send their youth to go become a man and an adult and things. And when you walk up to the petroglyphs there, I pulled out my tri-field meter and turned it over to the RF settings. And you can walk around these giant boulders with petroglyph carvings on them, and they'll have no reading at all, but you go up to certain glyphs and symbols, and the RF meter will just go off like crazy, almost like it's emitting a radio frequency or some kind of a signal. I don't know how to interpret that, but it's almost like they become like a harnessing point or a beacon, and it makes you wonder if the Native Americans were just naturally in tune with these energetic zones and these spots and using them for their spiritual practices.
That's very, very interesting. And Aaron, you've got so much property down there, and I know you haven't explored it too much. Do you believe there's petroglyphs on your property?
I would really believe so. There, if you come up from the south end of the property, I think it's Wellington, but there's a canyon. It's a 9-mile canyon, and it's chock full of petroglyphs. I mean, beautiful, beautiful petroglyphs. I've taken my kids there a couple of times to show them, what a petroglyph is and show them just the site itself. And so all the way up that canyon is the way that you go to our property. And pretty much it's a dirt road all the way up, and any red rock up in there, you can pretty much find some petroglyphs.
Very interesting.
David, if I can speak into this has been really an interesting correlation, but I had the opportunity to go to the deserts of Wadi Rum, and the Bedouins over there showed me some petroglyphs similar to what I've seen here in the Uintah Basin.
Wow.
And they disclosed that this could be a Sumerian language. And when I took it to a linguist, they couldn't identify the two words, and the language wraps around. And it's the same kind of thing that I've seen in Uintah Basin. I can't give locations because it is a sacred piece of land to the natives, but some of the same writings were there. Now, what's the correlation? That's to be identified.
Interesting. Interesting. Stinger, when you were there, did you witness anything like this?
No, I didn't see any weird lights or anything like that. Most of our stuff we did during the daytime. I wasn't out there very much during the night during the tours. But I had a thought on the gallium. You know, the Aztecs and the Mayans, they were pretty well known for their technology that they had available for them at the time. You know, we're looking for gold that the Aztecs possibly brought north to escape Cortez. And so maybe they were in touch with something that we're not aware of. I mean, when you looked at the video, the gallium was enclosed in rocks that had a high iron content. Maybe there's something with the gallium and the iron content, and with them being placed underground relatively close to the doorway, that's causing the doorway to open when they want it to.
That's really interesting. Aaron, is this stuff freaking you out? You have property up here, man.
You know, I love this though. I do. I grew up. I'm born and raised in Utah. I grew up with all the Uintah legends. I mean, the Lost Roads mine, the Josephine mine. You know, so I grew up. You know, looking for these things anyway. It's fun to me. You know, it's kind of spooky when I see things I don't understand. Not gonna lie, but other than that, it is exciting.
Well, and you know what's funny? Stinger brought up a really interesting point. You know, on Blind Frog, you know, up to this point in the season, you know, everybody was not sure what we were going to find in that box, expecting that maybe it was gold and all this, and then it turns out we've got gallium bored out and inserted into rocks, and now we're finding all this crazy information about what gallium can be used for. There's health benefits. There's you know, physical properties that are unique, similar to mercury, right? That could be used for all sorts of things that James brought up last week. Guys, if you haven't watched last week's show, you got to go back and watch it. Some amazing information. And what about the potential of all of these geological things coming together for potential, you know, portals, energy zones, all the crazy stuff that's going on here, right?
Yes.
Well, I have one thing that we're getting a lot of questions about, and it absolutely has nothing to do with the land. It has to do with this right here, and that is winning a hat signed by Dwayne Ollinger. So I have to bring that up right now, guys. We are giving away some signed Dwayne Ollinger hats. If you're not following us on Facebook, follow us on Facebook. You'll get the instructions there as to how to enter to win. We're going to give away some of those fun things. But let me bring this back to why we're all here, guys. James, Carl, Michele, you're all from the area. You all have some beautiful, beautiful wealth of information about the area, having nothing to do with, you know, whether there's a TV show or not. There is some really, really amazing aura about that land. It's crazy. Dwayne knows it. Dwayne's gone after it. Dwayne wants to find it. Aaron, you got some land in an inheritance that is out there as well. Stinger, you and I have had the pleasure of being up there. We're here to kind of uncover some of this stuff. And we want to thank everybody that's joining us. The fans are absolutely amazing and incredible. There's so many good people out here that just want to see what's going on, hear the truth, find out, why is there an airstrip on your property, Aaron? That's crazy, right? Why is there gallium inserted into rocks that are hidden in caves on Mystery at Blind Frog, right? Why are we, you know, experiencing all this crazy thing? Thank you so much for your testimony, Aaron. You know, it's tough for people to say to the world, I've seen something I can't explain, because, you know, there's all potential ridicule, there's potential of all of this stuff, but the truth is the truth, right, Aaron?
It is. Yeah, it is what it is. I mean, you know, when I tell the story and people will be like, oh, you don't know what you're doing, or hey, were you drinking or whatever? No, I wasn't drinking. It was what it was. And, you know, you can tend to believe me or you can not believe me. It's up to you what you decide. But I know what I saw, and I don't understand it. And that's all that I know.
Isn't that funny? It's the first question everybody has is, were you drinking? Were you high? Were you know?
Exactly. Exactly.
And
Nope.
like I've heard Dwayne say 100 times, I like a good blue moon, but that's not why I tell my story.
That's right. That's right.
Michele, we've got a comment here. You know, love the Native American perspective. This expands, you know, the scientific info. Thank you so much, Michele, for your perspective. We could create a whole show around some of your knowledge. So we appreciate that you come on and tell us some of this. We've got so many great comments from the fans here. I just want to say to everybody, keep watching, keep supporting the show, let other people know about it. And I'm talking about what they're doing with Discovery on Mystery at Blind Frog Ranch, as well as us here, just kind of getting together and talking about what's going on. We're at the halfway mark, guys. There was a break this week. Next week, I'm sure, is going to be an awesome show. I can't wait to see. As you guys may know, even though we're involved with Blind Frog Ranch, I have no idea what's on next week's episode or any of the new episodes. So I'm just excited to see it as you guys are. And with that, any final notes, Keenan, until we get to next week?
No, I like I said, I'm as excited to watch next week as everyone else to see what they, you know, find or what they end up doing. And I'd like to add my own 2 cents, but I guess I'll do that to Dwayne, you know, later in private.
Fair enough. And Carl, you'll be watching from your new home, so I'm glad about that. You'll get to check things out. Stinger, thanks for joining us. And with that, I'm going to sign us off, guys. Once again, all the fans, we appreciate you. Go to blindfrogranchoutpost.com. Get your BFR mug for 15% off this week. Be sure to use that coupon code so you can get it. It's BFR mug at the coupon code in the checkout, and you'll get your 15% off of the mugs. But otherwise, thanks again. We're out, guys. Appreciate you very much.
All right, guys.